keep myself sure. Okay, so that's going, but I wonder the share screen button. Maybe I can just do it from this one. No, it's not from here. It's from here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, share. Screen.
Oh.
Or this one.
Mm-hmm.
Share that.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, whenever people appear. I'm trying to be back home very soon.
Awesome.
Is that the computer?
Yeah, someone just joined. Yeah.
Oh, you's on. Hi. What are you listening to? Can you hear us?
Meek Mill, yeah.
Are you there with Brittany still?
Yeah, she's about to log in. Hey, Joseph.
Hey.
Maybe you can see us. Cool, so once Brittany's on, we can start then, right? Because I think that's it. Because Maya's driving to New Orleans.
He's not coming?
She didn't respond.
She said she's going to do virtual. But, I mean, you can start at 6. That's how I feel, you know?
She text back, though? When did she respond?
That's weird. I don't know why she didn't respond to you, because I text her.
Oh, she did respond. She said, I might make virtual if I finish my last-minute Christmas shopping.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess once Brittany logs in, you can start. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35.
I was actually in not. No offense, they're pretty, but what she was doing was that she thought that my friend Ezgi and I were very close, and Ezgi is that woman that was she's the Turkish member of parliament.
How's your days on?
Huh?
How's your day?
Who's going to steal me?
Oh, you're so sweet to ask.
Like,
well, my
definitely.
Come to Jesus conversation with a core member.
That's cool. Did it go well?
You know, I don't really care how it went because I think she got the message.
Oh, okay.
And I was greeted by 3. So it seems to be going pretty all right. How about your day?
You know, I hosted a party for like 30-ish third graders.
Nice. How'd that go? I can only imagine how crazy it was.
I mean, at a certain point, I just kind of sat down on the back table and just watched. Just took it all.
Good.
But during that time where I probably should have still been walking around, a child knocked over 6 cups of hot chocolate.
Nice. I mean, it happens. Did that child clean up those 6 cups?
Yeah, after I told him to go find napkins, and he was like, but that's the janitor's job. And I said, no, it's your job. Go get a ring of napkins and clean it all up.
Janitor.
He did. He definitely was like, that's the janitor's job. And I was like, no, it's your job.
That's so amazing.
This entitlement begins at this age.
Myself because that's why.
No, it's your job to take care of yourself and make.
That sounds fun. Did you get some good video footage of that party?
Oh no. I have like a 10-second clip on Instagram showing how, like, I really wrote, at this point a child could ask if they can climb the wall, and I'll say yes. So if I press present, let's see if it keeps you guys on the screen with us. Yeah. All right, cool. So we can start because we're all here, and it's 6 o'clock. All right. Wow, this is really close to my face. Let's see back there. All right, so we're going back to the book. First, just checking in. How many of you have actually finished reading the book? Brady, how'd you do on the book? You finished it? You're muted, girl. We can't hear you.
And I'll mute mine so it's not an echo.
How annoying.
Oh, no, you guys can't talk. It's going to sound horrible. Okay,
right. I'm not done still, but I'm on chapter 8, and so it's been great. I just, like, everyone else, the administration, I feel like they're telling us to be, like, strict, And then like the book is very, you know, like they can be out of their seats and like they can be shouting out, kind of, you know, and I don't know how to like balance the structure that they need and the like giving them freedom. Because like I had a class today where like they were mostly on task, they were mostly like on task and like shouting out. And I do a lot of shout outs when like I tell them like, what's the middle of the cell? And they'll be like, nucleus, if like they know. And that's good. But then like if I get kids to explain, like they're talking over each other like ridiculously. So like there'll be like the engagement that you want. And like the kids are getting really excited. But then like sometimes it gets too loud and then like the kids in the back or like the kids who really just aren't that into it will just like have a side conversation now because like we weren't really paying attention before.
Don, how are you doing with the book? I think you might be able just to say it and we'll hear you. Oh, or that. Which mics?
One sec, I didn't hear you. I need to turn up my volume. I need to get
I said, Yuzan, how are you doing with the book? We can't hear her. Are you talking to us? We can't hear you.
We're just going to assume she didn't get that far.
I know. I was like, we're gonna assume she didn't finish the book.
Yeah.
I want to switch it, but I don't want to be rude. Did you finish the book?
It's so complicated. I said, now turn your volume off so it's not echo.
Okay.
Grading papers right now. I'm here for moral support, but I love you.
Okay.
That's how I'm doing with the book.
Sounds like a plan. Well, on the bright side, I appreciate you guys being honest about the book. First off, I know it's kind of a dense read. It's why I listened to it on Audible. But it is a good listen. I don't know if I would have read it if I had to read each page. But I broke down the book by chapter again, so we'll be able to go through it, even though if you haven't read everything. But first, I wanted to go over our norms one more time. So if anyone, probably one of you two, who's a little easier, could read the norms, I'd really appreciate it.
All right, so number 1, be fully present. At the end, everyone will share one thing that they hope to do in their classroom as a response to this session. Number 3, be vocal, please. And number 4, expect non-closure.
Everyone good with that?
Can't see you, Corey.
Except for being fully present, I'm going to be a bad example because I'm grading papers, but I already said that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so as I mentioned, I outlined the session like last time because you guys said that you guys enjoyed the way it was. Really straightforward. I'm going to have to call my brother back later. So we're going to finish through chapters 8 through 11, and then I have the conclusion, the closing of the book as well. And then we'll have a section where we can talk for a quick second, and then exit ticket. It won't take too long, I promise. So again, I have the terminology of the book. So at the beginning of the book, kind of in the introduction, it talks about like who are white people in the book, or like who is the book talking to. And it says anyone who maintains a system that doesn't serve the needs of children in the hood. And it says the hood is just a place where dysfunction is prevalent. This can be urban or rural, which is why I thought this book was really good for TFA, especially because we have some people in places like Jackson and some people out in Cleveland and Arkansas now too for us, which is new for me. And the last one says why culturally relevant pedagogy. It's because it addresses cultural differences between teachers and students. It fights against classroom colonialism. And I was really hoping someone could tell me why they think cultural relevant pedagogy is important for us as Teach for America teachers.
I think that it often has to do with the fact that we're often stepping into spaces different from ones that we are normally from, and maybe adjusting or listening to the rhythm, the tempo around us, and using that and applying that to our teaching practices so that way we're more effective and more precise.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I felt that exact way when I chose to do the book study. And I know that Teach for America often gets a lot of pushback about bringing people who aren't from these areas and just bringing us into places that are completely new to us and expecting us to excel or teach kids. And so I thought this book could help us fight back or push back on that stereotype we get. So I think it's next to the first chapter. All right, so chapter 8. Oh, how do I move this?
Just click and drag it, I think.
It's just us, right?
Yeah, it's just us.
Okay.
Other.
I'm gonna get on.
So just log off.
Okay, so just like last time, I have points from the book that I pulled, and then I have a question on each one. For the question, I would love if at least 2 people share for each slide. But for the points, since there are 3 points from the book, I kind of don't like that I can't see them now. All right, since there are 3 points from the book, I can read the first one, but then I would invite 2 others to read the others. So the first point that I pulled is the root of many divides among the youth is sustained by those who profit from their divisions, such as the media. So I'll read the next point.
The battle is not with the person who stands in front of you, but with life.
And then the last point.
If we bring the battle into the classroom, we will allow others to build community instead of asking students to compete to be the top student in the room. Allow your students to write a rap or poem.
All right, so because I know some of us haven't had the chance to read the book, I'm going to explain what he said the battle was. He was referring to like the rap battle that kids sometimes engage in the hood for his culture, the place that he was set in. And he talks about how a rap battle picks a place where people can learn from other people and have a chance to actively respond on their own turf with their own material that they've taken in. So he said bringing that to the classroom, allowing kids to make up a rap or a poem and respond to another student in a rap or a poem would allow them to bring the battle, but also introduce rules that they already know and a chance for them to be comfortable in what they're learning. So in reading those points, before we get to the question, is there anything that sticks out to any of you guys or anything that you're like, that doesn't make sense to me, or it does make sense to you?
Sorry, go ahead. Ms. Brittany.
It makes sense that would like be something that resonates with them. I guess like the thing I guess that I'm like, is it, can I do it? Can I manage it? Like with that many students, you know, because like I've had to have like dialogue with my class and like they're just kind of organized dialogue and they can't seem to do it themselves or they haven't like chosen to.
Does anyone have any tips that they could share with Brittany about how they've possibly brought like an organized dialogue to their own classrooms, or a way to help her provide a structure that she's comfortable with in her class for the kids to do something like this?
I mean, in my classroom, it doesn't exactly coincide with the idea that the book is bringing, but just to encourage dialogue generally. I have a point system on the board I use, so I'm like, okay, if you give me a hand, you know, the answer to question 1 is the lovely Janaya, and then she'll respond, and then she'll get a point of extra credit on the board, and kids get really into that because it's like a very easy visual way they can see how they're earning extra credit, so it encourages dialogue, like at least from student to whole group like that. And then it also tends to be effective because if you need to discipline a kid, you can just kind of stand at the board and start wiping away extra credit, but it's not really, it's like an imaginary penal thing. It's not you coming directly having to like crossfire with a student.
And then Brittany, do you teach middle school or high school?
Middle school, I teach 7th grade.
Okay, because I know I have elementary and you guys both have high school, right?
Yeah.
So I know in elementary, practice definitely makes perfect. And I know that goes for all grades and like all things as well, but it's a little easier to tell the kids we're going to walk in the hallway over and over again until we get it right when you're in elementary. But that kind of goes for everything else I do in my class. So when like last session I showed you guys that I let them make up their own raps for multiplication. And doing that, I had the day before I had a group of kids practice. and then I allowed them to show the class, and I was like, who would like to do that? And so I had someone else model it that wasn't me, so they can see that they can do it, but it was like my high group of kids, so I knew they would get it right away. And I had them model for the class, and then the class was like, oh, I want to do that too. And I was like, but you guys have to be able to follow directions and actually stay on task, and that actually helped my kids a lot. And I found that letting the kids model for each other often lets them do better than when I model for them, because it's more realistic, like they can do it themselves, I guess.
Mm.
And then the question I have from this chapter is, how can we better provide a sense of community in our own classrooms? So I would invite at least 2 people to share a way that they've built a sense of community in their classrooms.
For me,
Okay,
you go, Miss Brittany.
He's on.
so I can share about that.
He's on, sorry.
Well, y'all don't have to look at me. I always made sure to provide not only roles when kids were working together, but also provide opportunity for students to give each other feedback, because then it's not just me telling you how you, it's your classmates as well. And what I learned, I taught middle school, but what I learned is that most students don't really care about what adults say. It was more impactful to get a feedback slip or have a feedback conversation. I started off with slips of paper that they would just fill out and give to the person.
Were they anonymous? I'm guessing they were. The slips were anonymous, right?
Yeah, they're anonymous, but they already knew it, so they knew it had to be someone from their group.
Oh, okay.
So I start off by just giving them the slips. Then I adjusted to having conversations with the kids with their, towards the end of the year. I didn't do this. Maybe in January I did it. But I started having the kids explain their slips, to like giving feedback in the moment with their, like basically reading the slip and having a conversation about it. So I like scaffolded student abilities to do that. Brittany, your phone is ringing. I scaffolded their ability to do that, but I saw a change occur faster than when I would just give them feedback or no feedback at all.
I was just saying, like, providing a sense of community. I allow, in ELA, I allow the students to help guide what we're talking about. If we're covering a major reading, like we're gonna go over Frankenstein. I allow the student interest learning if like there's something particularly that has happened in our local community. Find a way to tie that in thematically and have this read articles and tie that back into the main literature, and how does that tie in? What is the theme of the literature? What is that knocking at, and how does it apply to actual real life? And it brings the literature to life, and it also gets the students more interested in it and helps build that community.
That's cool. And I'm not sure if it was in the book or one of you guys said it last time, but something that was pretty cool, I think it was in the book, and a way of building community is he let the students decorate a piece of paper with like their nicknames or things like that, and he put it up on the wall in their classroom. I know I personally am not going to do it with my 3rd graders because some of their drawings are still a little atrocious and I'm not sticking it on my wall. But with the older kids, it may come out cool because even if they can't draw, the older we get, usually the more we get creative with our handwriting or cursive or something, and they know what's presentable and what's not. I have kids who can't draw and still think they can, so I don't really want to put myself in that situation. But that's something you guys might be interested in doing, like have this half day tomorrow. You can let them decorate something and stick it up for when they get back. Something to do for a half day. And chapter 9, the point says neo-indigenous youth are more into aesthetics than academics. So he talks about how kids come to school in like the new Jordans or like the freshest outfit, but yet don't have a pencil, or their homework's always crumbled up. And a teacher had actually brought that concern to him. And she was saying, like, how can I get my students to be as caring about their schoolwork as they are about their clothes? And the author suggested to her that she picks up a pair of sneakers and wears them to school that the kids would admire. He said the change in her attire would allow her to better connect with the kids and open up a new portal for conversation. I was wondering what you guys thought about that suggestion. Like, hey, you're not connecting with your kids, so go buy a new pair of sneakers and let's see how that conversation helps you connect with them. What do you think about that suggestion?
I'll go. I completely identify with that. That when there were times that, and that doesn't mean the class as a whole. There's certain kids in academic stuff, but you can connect with them over fashion or something else, right? So like utilizing that as a bridge to get them to where you can have a conversation about anything is great. So I feel like
I agree too. Definitely like fashion can like make a connection, and like when I changed to 7th grade, and so I tried to 8th graders were like, Miss Barnett, why didn't you dress as nice when you were teaching us? And I'm like, because I slacked, but I love you.
On our casual Fridays, I'll make a point sometimes to wear my Converse or my Adidas, rather than just my black Oxford dress shoes or something. And then the kids will pick up on it, and we'll be like, "Oh, I see Mr. H is sporting them Adidas today," you know, and stuff like that. It helps. I mean, for me, I kind of challenge this notion, though. It's like, you know, this sense of neo-indigenous, which, I mean, being not black, I guess I can't, you know, it's not really my place to say what blacks should label themselves as, but I don't necessarily care for
Weird label.
I think it's a very it's a patronizing label, because I mean the way that the word indigenous itself is used, I mean, it's discrimination against Native Americans. But you know, to make a claim that, you know, that essentially black youth are not, you know, are just not culturally academic, I mean, like I somewhat reject that, because it's almost a defeatist position, saying, well, because they're black, they can't, you know, they're really obviously not going to be geared towards math or science or English, and therefore I need to wear Jordans. I think that this a central point here is that, you know, the students, they being just children, black or white, they're looking at adults to try to be, you know, they're searching for identity, and especially in my high school setting, and more so even in the elementary setting, they're like, okay, who can I relate to the world around me, you know, and us being the primary adults in their lives, unfortunately, but sometimes fortunately,
Yeah.
you know, they see me, you know, in a dress shirt and a tie every day. You know, to them, I don't look like anything that they go home to, and how could they really identify with that? And I think that sometimes by dressing down and saying, yeah, sometimes I can wear a pair of jeans with a hole in them, and, you know, some Adidas and a concert T-shirt, you know, I think that that's more what that appeals to, is people, them being like, oh, okay, this is someone I can identify with, because I myself might consider wearing that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Mr. H isn't as much of a, you know, an uptight whatever than I think he is. Or
And I think also one of the important things, right, is like your kids have exposure to like you in a suit and tie. And I think one of the undervalued things in education is, yeah, education's supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable. It's supposed to introduce our kids to things they wouldn't normally be exposed to. And I just think, at least the way I would approach this is, you know, not to wear a new pair of shoes myself, because I think that's a bit vapid, but I would connect with the kid and say, oh, well, I see we can't be putting enough attention onto our simultaneous equations or whatever as
Like
we do our new
with the girl's
Jordans.
hair, right? You're
Exactly.
like, I see she has
Like
new hair today.
I can just talk to them as a person instead of like trying to put on the front myself. And I'm not like, dressing myself in Jordans would be, one, disingenuous to me. Like that would just be weird for me to do in the classroom. But two, like I don't like the idea where then that kind of limits the kids' exposure to like, oh, like, you know, like this is what a dowdy, brainy professor kind of looks like. Like that's what that is. Like I think that exposure is crucial, and I can just get the same result by just like addressing a kid and drawing that connection myself.
I actually was on the same wavelength as you when I read this part in the book. That's why I have it. Because in my head, when I first read it, listening to it, I was like, buy a new pair of sneakers. That's how she's going to connect with her students. And I was like, I get how it's a conversation starter. I was like, but what happens if she just goes back to wearing her regular pair of loafers every day? Then what? But I do notice that even with my elementary schoolers, like I remember I wore Pumas one day, and one of my students was like, I've been had Pumas. Your books are so old. But then it like started like a whole thing. They were like, well, let's look it up. And they were like, well, how many years ago was Puma made then? Miss Singleton? I was like, Pumas are old. They've been made a long time ago. I was like, but so were Jordans. Like we actually looked it up, and we did math around like what year it is now to what year like all these different imprints came out, and they actually worked out the math and were really interested in it. But I feel like that's such a rare situation. So I was like, it's interesting. He was like, pick a pair of shoes to me. Okay. And then my other question that I brought up here, because he talks about how kids are more into the way things look than their academics. So they talk about we need to put just as much effort into the classroom decor as kids put into their outfits. Do you guys think classroom decor is very, very important, or how do you feel about it and why?
I think that it can be important because it can help set the stage when a student walks in. I mean, at least in my school, I mean, it's a very good, strong indicator between the permanent subs and who are the teachers. It's like, oh, I walked into this guy's room, he actually has it. And, just by the virtue of being a teacher, I've been accumulating things over the years. So, the first year I started out, I just had a couple posters on the wall, but now I was able to find a bookshelf, and I inherited all these books from a former retiring teacher. And I got my classroom really kind of starting to look somewhat more, decent. And my students from last year come in, they're like, Mr. H, why didn't you do this for us? And I was just like, oh, well, I just didn't have the resources then. Welcome to come back anytime you want, though, if you want to borrow a book. But to me, at least at my school site, it's more of an indicator of being like, oh, and it also shows a sense of permanence, especially since, we've had 10 teachers quit my school this year. And so, that's becomes a universal sign where you're seeing the teacher carrying out their things. And there's, I think, almost a sense of trauma because, it's like when dad left or when mom left, exiting their life, and they're just seeing that lack of nothingness. And so to me, I find it comforting.
I think that sense of permanency that comes with it. That I never thought about it that way, but like if I have my classroom completely set up, the likelihood of me leaving in a kid's eyes at least is lower. If I have bare walls, they're like, they're only here for the time.
Yeah, it like shifts the mindset from like, oh, I wonder how long she's going to stick around. To be like, okay, she has experience. Like we're here. We're not going anywhere. So.
Because I know, like as an elementary school teacher, you guys are probably seen some of the classes that are like super colorful, super decorated. I'm not that teacher. I'm gonna put up wow work. I'm gonna have a bookshelf. Like I have plenty of stuff. I have a cool down corner. I have 3 different carpets in my room, but everything's like here. It's plain, simple, cut, clean, and short. Because I don't do pretty in my classroom. We're here to work, but we're organized, so it looks organized. But every year, like last year, I got pushed back. They were like, "Your room's pretty plain." This year, I did a little bit more, and they were like, "Still pretty plain, Miss Singleton." I was like, "Well, this is all you're gonna get from me. It meets all the requirements." But Brittany, what do you think?
I was a little like frustrated by this. My room that I started off with, you think it was okay decorated, right? I think I decorated like my other one awesome. And my kids like kind of tore it up a little bit, but they liked it. Like then like I transitioned to like 7th grade, and like the teacher didn't like really decorate anything, and we kind of just inherited each other's rooms, so I didn't really add anything to it at that point, especially since my 8th graders like they kind of trashed my other room, and that was like one thing that I've had a little bit of trouble with, and so I haven't done anything really to this room, but I might a little bit like before the break. So, because I had like plants and stuff, and they like hole punched my plants.
No.
How did that even happen?
Desk, and like because it was by the window, and his desk was by the window, and he like was hole punching it. I don't know. It happens.
You gotta teach kids about care for things.
Yeah, and they didn't listen to me.
Well, I had a kid that did that with my Botswana flag. I just started yelling at him and stuff. He's like, Mr. Rage, I'm so sorry. I'm like, get out, get out. And he's like, he wasn't even supposed to be in my room anyways. I was holding him. Like, you go to someone else's room and think about this. He's like, Mr. H, and he's like on his hands and knees groveling. And I was just like, Malcolm, I am done with you. Get out. I walked him over. I took him by his hoodie. I'm like, we're going to another room.
That makes me think about like how some teachers have problems with like kids stealing stuff. They're like, I don't want to buy nice things for my class because kids are going to steal it. And I remember, like, I honestly don't have a stealing problem in my class, but my first year, last year, I had one kid steal something and I lost my cool completely. And I was like, you guys will have absolutely nothing in this room if you steal from me. And I was like, nothing. I was like, you guys won't get anything from me, any parties, anything. And I haven't had that problem since, but I had to completely snap on every kid in my class. So let's see.
I had a kid steal my speaker. And I still have kids steal my expo markers. But yeah, I don't do anything about it, which I like.
You should say something, like tell them that like this is their classroom, and when they're taking stuff, it takes from them, because then I don't have expo markers for you to come right on this board, and I'm not buying new ones for you. So hope you buy me some more.
I agree.
Yeah. Like pencils and erasers, like the big block erasers, I stopped buying them. I'm like, hope you guys buy some for yourself and keep taking them.
Yeah, I put my expo marker, like after I'm done lecturing and writing on the board, I just put it away or put it in my pocket so they don't.
Yeah.
They're expensive. No.
So for the sake of time, let's go ahead and go to chapter 10. So chapter 10 talks about code switching or being a social chameleon. So code switching is a practice that allows people to navigate between different sectors of life. And it says that to validate the code students use in the classroom and then fail to teach them the codes of the world is irresponsible. I felt that was a really important or a really big quote from the book. So it was like, if we tell the kids, the whole book is about telling the kids that the way they live, their culture matters. But if we teach them so much that their culture matters, but don't teach them about the dominant culture of the world, it says we're being irresponsible. I would love to hear you guys' reactions to that. See a lot of nods, which is cool.
I guess it's probably one of the most important things. I guess, especially if you're working with quote unquote minority communities, especially since they find themselves. Since the minority community is often victimized by forces, the authoritative forces of our society, the police and others, accidentally, intentionally, however that is, you see that, and understanding and learning how to, work, how to work with, how to get things done and make things work. Let's say when you're in the quote unquote hood, right? You are, is it, when you're, let's say, out dining, at like Drago's Seafood, here in Jackson, which is, a proper fine establishment, what's the volume level, what's the vernacular that should be used, and how to navigate those two different spaces, and recognizing that there are such things as spaces and that they need to be navigated somewhat differently, and the perceptions people carry about you. But I can understand though the challenge of that, let's say in the STEM classrooms where it's like, okay, this is maybe biology, but like imagining like a physics teacher trying to discuss that would be kind of almost off topic. But it would be probably more suitable for like history or like the social sciences or English.
So I'm gonna try to kind of combine my two questions so you guys can see them, so you can read them. But do you guys think it's our job to teach the kids about code switching, and also, please help me, how do we teach the kids the language of the dominant culture? Because like I work with little kids, so they definitely most of the time only speak how they're spoken to at home. And I hate telling them like that's not how you say it, but I do often. So if you say, you don't got any more, I'm like, I don't have any more. And I answer like that, but I don't like to say, you didn't say that correctly. Because at home, that's how they're taught. That's how they're spoken to. So it's like, how do I push back on that? Or only way I can do it is modeling. What do you guys think? I would love to hear the help on that.
That's so tricky because I almost do the opposite in my classroom. Like there's very intentional things I'll do. It'll be like, oh no, like, something I said today is like, oh, all these kids just want to not do anything all semester, but then they don't want to do their work and just using they instead of their, which is a common thing, at least at my high school, my kids would do. And I'll do linguistic shifts like that because it's almost for me, what's more important is like my kids are advancing in math and I don't really care so much as language, whereas I know if Joe next year gets my kids, which he would or will, like that's going to be an issue for him. Because I'm not very particular about language, and Oh, it's just a very tricky
Because
question.
I
the
mean,
reading teacher will show me
yeah.
their writing. I'm like, ooh, yeah, she talks like that.
Well, I mean, what I'll do is, I mean, I'll tell them there's spoken English and then there's written English, and I'll create a difference between the two. You know, there's that maneuver which is like in written English, you know, and I'll break the sentence down. I have verb to be, form of to be, and you need to properly conjugate it because they all know Spanish. Like they know how to say yo soy essentially in Spanish. Like it's the same thing in English. We just don't think about it. We just don't teach it that way for native English speakers. But it is the same thing as the conjugation. In written English, this is how we do it. The other thing is that I haven't really run into students this year that, I mean, because I've got the IB students. But one thing I did last year, because I know there were a couple of them where it was just driving me insane, we would role play. I would get radio scripts from like the 1960s, 1970s, and then I would be like, you know, I'd be like, okay, read this out loud, read this play out loud with me. You know, and first off, is they're forcing them to practice, and if they do say like, what you know, they don't want to do they work. I'd be like, no, that's not how, you know, someone from you know, a 1960s radio announcer would speak it as, and like role play, be like, no, you got to sound, you know. I'll look it up the thing where they, you know, the car salesman in the 1960s, you know, will talk like this, you know, real quick, you know, like trying to make that deal, you know, and be like, no, you got to try it like that. You got to practice it like that, you know, doing so that over pronunciation effect. And in that way, I don't feel like I'm necessarily coming in and being like, no, you're saying it wrong. More or less, this is, you know, we're practicing this dialogue, and it's, you know, conjugation or misconjugation isn't a thing in this dialogue.
Vanilla for me, I hate saying like that's wrong, but also it's like me telling you what you're saying is wrong. It's me saying the way your mom talks at home is wrong too, and I don't like that part.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell them like everything that you come from, the way they
Right.
speak is wrong. Zahn, do you have any tips for that? I know I'm calling on you, but you're like,
No, it's glad you did because I'm over here trying to grade papers, but I really want to speak on this. So a couple of things. The first thing that comes to mind is this is super frustrating because often language is used as a way to create, you know, like basically like a systemic hierarchy or support the systemic hierarchy that already exists. So I completely love hearing what I'm hearing from Joe and as far as like what you were doing in your class and talking about like, oh, we're practicing this type of dialogue as opposed to saying like this is English and what you're saying is not English. So that's the first thing that I want to say. I have a teacher who just to add on to that last point, I think it's also cool if you're like often encouraging students like put themselves in somebody else's shoes and, you know, see how well that they can act as if they were them and kind of code switch that way, but not necessarily like, oh, if you are around, you know, white people or other people, like I don't want it to be tied to like race or class or anything like that. Like it should be tied to like this person and their experience, because that's exactly how your language develops, is your personal experiences, right? So I think the first solution to that is making sure that we're celebrating the differences. I think that is often overlooked in classroom, that you celebrate language differences and how you say it, giving students the opportunity to say it however they say whatever they want, where they want, and, you know, creating space for that. Also acknowledging that when we are they're speaking, acknowledging that like we might be doing that for just control, and like if you acknowledge that, then you're more likely to avoid doing that. And then also I feel like responsibility as educators to continue to demonstrate about how language is so, it's always evolving, right? Like simple example, in the dictionary, they're always adding new words. So like say can't be a word. It can be, right? So, but it's just been framed in a way that it can't be in order to keep them as like a lower, you know, group. So I just think that the way y'all were describing going about it, like just saying, yes, we're practicing this dialogue in combination will set them up for success. But honest issue is with the system. And I hate to talk about like that because as if it's this ominous being, but that is what the issue is, where the problem how we're pushing back against the system
Do you guys
and non-grading papers.
do you guys think teachers should have to speak proper or written English in order to model it for the kids? Or do you guys think it's better that we allow ourselves to code switch to better relate with our kids? Do we model the behavior, or do we relate with their behavior?
At least in my classroom, I make it a point that like all instruction is always delivered in a very professorial academic way, and then in individualized instruction, I'll typically code switch to make kids feel more comfortable. But I'm a very big believer that myself, I should model an academic world that the kids wouldn't necessarily have exposure to. And I mean, a lot of my kids are confused by it. I've been like, Mr. Garcia, like, we just don't do these things. I was like, well, yes, but having gone to college in California, this was what a classroom was like. And yeah, like, we're not going to be as quiet as the classroom probably back in California, but I want to show you that it works like this, and this in other places, and I want you to have that exposure as well.
I mean, the ultimate goal for us is I think, is that, is getting to these students to a point where the world doesn't have to adapt to them, but they can adapt to the world. And I don't feel that can happen if we're constantly, trying to just completely just do nothing but identify with them. Because, I mean, at some point, if I'm successful, Theodore McCarthy will go off to Tulane University next year. And at Tulane, he will have professors who will not, everything is, I have a PhD and he wants to do English. And so he's going to, he'll have to take Renaissance and Reformation English classes. And the professor is going to be someone probably that did their PhD at University of Edinburgh or whatever, who's going to be sitting there, and Theodore is not going to be his main concern, right? His main concern is his grad assistants and the paper he's trying to publish and the research he's trying to get his foot in. And Theodore is going to have to be, self-motivated enough and also have the tools to adapt to that environment. If he goes back home on the weekends and, talks with a certain, what we could call, unacademic dialogue with his friends, that's fine. But in that environment, he'll need to be able to write and also, converse in a way that would demand respect. And, once again, it's kind of a tricky tightrope that Yuzan's talking about. It's like, well, in this case, it's the domineering culture that is taking over, and I don't think that if I was a professor, which I'm qualified to be, in a college situation, I wouldn't, if someone asked a question or something, I wouldn't correct them openly or publicly, and as long as I was even as an English professor or whatever, I wouldn't sit there and be marking out misconjugations in the paper, as long as there was major substance, because I'm not focusing on that. That wouldn't be the theme of the assignment, unless that's what it was a composition class. But
it's almost the idea, right? It's just like being multilingual offers someone more advantages in the world, and being able to give our kids access to academic discourse mainstream just gives our kids more opportunity to both move in the social world in which they're familiar with, but also have access to collegiate proper mainstream academics as well.
Brittany, what do you think as far as teachers? Should we be modeling the proper or written English, or should we be trying to connect with them through their spoken language?
I think they get a little bit less exposure sometimes, but then I also do code switch for sure and talk with them like they're similar to the way they're talking, just to let them know that I can code switch. Mm-hmm. and I feel them seeing an adult who evaluates the fact that code switching is something that you do is a good thing to do. To me, it's almost it's a good thing to be able to code switch between language, because then you're able to communicate better with whoever you're around. And sometimes you're in one dominant culture and it's better to be able to communicate with that culture, and sometimes you're in another culture and you need to be able to communicate with that. And I think that's something to kids and let them know that it's okay.
I think it's
I
kind
think,
of like being able to wear the Adidas or the dress shoes.
And it's okay and it's perfectly fine to have both in your closet.
Yeah.
And it's important to be able to. I wouldn't have been hired for Teach for America if I showed up to that interview wearing Adidas. I don't think. Well, maybe. But that was not a social experiment I was eager to run at that time period. I was going to come up with a full suit and all.
I remember at my Teach for America interview, actually, I was the only one not in black and white. The only one with color in my outfit. And I was like, oh, I don't fit in here. And I felt like the oddball in the room during my interview.
I think it's important to also point out that for your question about should we code switch, is that I always want to encourage teachers to be their authentic selves. So if that is not how you speak, don't try it, because it's going to come off very ingenuine, and it's going to come off. I've had to have talks with core members that turn like difficult conversations with core members, like, you sound like you're mocking your students.
Oh.
And want to ever have that, like, have to have that conversation, because you know if it's genuine or not. You know if you talk like that or not. And so if you don't do it. Talk how you do talk. If you do change in a professional or social setting, stick to what you know. Then the responsibility therein lies for you to bring in other people who speak differently than you and expose your children to that. So I code switch all the time with my kids because I grew in when I was teaching, because I grew up in that same neighborhood. I went to that middle school. So that was fine. That was natural to me. But then it was my job to bring people from different cultures and eat foods from different places, stuff that I didn't even identify with, that into the classroom so that they could see that the world is bigger than them.
So chapter 11, it talks about how the classroom environment more so, and the teacher in the case study, they were told that they are always yelling at their class and they're always fussing, and that their classroom environment isn't really conducive to learning due to their behavior, not the students' behavior. And the teacher said when he was first told this, he kind of wiped off what the students said, like, oh, whatever. You guys think I yell too much because you guys are the bad ones, basically. And then a student recorded his classes on their smartphone and made a series, like a clip series of like him fussing at the class all the time. And it talks about how the identification of an issue isn't always enough when you are told it, but be able to reflect on it using something like a video is also very powerful. And it says that a part of teaching well is allowing students to critique their learning environment. So in seeing that video, he was kind of like, oh, this is bad. And he got with a group of students, and they came up with a plan that whenever his voice was getting to a level that made students in the classroom uncomfortable, the students would like tap their pencils on their desk. And he agreed that that was his sign to calm down. But also, if there were students in the classroom who were getting on his nerves, he would tap his pencil on his desk, and like his 4 classroom leaders would kind of try to calm the class down.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, I know personally when I read it, I was like, yeah, no, not for me. Personally, when I read it, because like if I'm raising my voice, I feel like there's probably a reason for me to be raising my voice. But what do you guys think about allowing students to have an input on your discipline style of the classroom, not on their behavior, but on your discipline style, because they can't change what everyone else in class is doing?
I'm all for it. I mean, my first thing in TFA when I was here, I felt really, my sense identity as being this like unique, white gay guy kind of in the environment, and having to like, okay, well, I've got to definitely like, show up and, show out, the yelling, frustrating thing, and doing all that. And it was getting absolutely nowhere fast. Like, slamming doors and yelling, I would just come home hoarse and frustrated, and I just got to a point where I was like, I just respect myself way too much to be into screaming and everything. If the class gets set on fire, the class is on fire.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to, and you know what, that's fine. I come from a long line of firefighters. Like, I can handle this. But then it's like, it didn't, because, and I found out, for me at least, it was the students. They wanted a reaction. They wanted a show. They want entertainment. So I mean, and I've gotten kind of well known in the 200 hall in the sense that, it's like something really major, like the kids will, someone will make a really goofy statement and I'll just kind of look at them and just be like, and so your point, like, come on, get to it. And I'll make a joke. I'm like, look, girl, there's no curse word I haven't heard yet. And I know more, and I actually know more curse words than you do because I know different languages. So, well, at least, right? And so for me, as far as the students being able to do that to me, if that was a problem, then yes, like, and I would look at that and be like, wow, like there are at least 4 people in this room that are so invested in their learning that they want to help control me. Fine, go for it, tap away, and I'll power down, if that was an issue, or maybe if there's an issue with, I mean, it can be translated, I think, in other things other than just being that, or just like the classroom activities, like we're really bored of this certain thing, like.
Oh, I like that. I would love to know, like, you guys are actually bored, not get a whole bunch of F's in response. You guys are bored.
Yeah, we're like, just be like, we're bored. We don't want to read another article right now, and then I'll be like, okay, fine, and maybe we can switch to writing, or you guys bring in an article,
I keep calling on you. Sorry, I know you just walked away. I feel like I keep calling you guys, but I don't want to forget that you guys are also a part of this session. So, Don, since you do have, I think it was 3 years, right? 3 years of teaching. Did you ever allow your students to tell you, like, give you feedback on your discipline style in the classroom?
Yes, I can invite them to, only when it's invited though, and only in a certain way. I make sure to make that clear. You can't just tell me no, but you have to tell me why. But also I let them know up front, we're not going to change it in, the middle of the year, when you're just not feeling it that day. My thing is, like, I'm going to share my rules with you, and I'm going to share with you my consequences. And at that point in time, I'm going to ask for feedback of, like, if that works for you, say that works for me, that type of feedback, hold feedback. And then I say, like, also, if at any point in time, you'd like to discuss options, you can address me, one-on-one. But it's not really like a, no,
Like a whole
not
group
really.
against.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. Because it's
Like, how would you feel with something like that? Like the students tapping if they were like uncomfortable with like the voice, the level of your voice or something in your classroom.
Oh, I get that. Like tapping on the desk or something like that.
Yeah, because he said in the book that he allowed for students that whenever his voice got to an uncomfortable like level, they were able to tap their pencils on their desk and he would have to.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yes. No, I apologize again. But yes, so like, especially if it's certain students, if you've shown me that you're responsible and you abuse this power and that you take into consideration what the whole team is feeling, great. But if you're going to make it all about you and what you like, and then you're just going to do it to irritate me, then no.
How do you differentiate that though?
They earn that. So I'm not going to ask for feedback until maybe like second quarter. Because first quarter, I need to see that you're always making the right decision, that you're a leader, help other people, that you already have.
So how does that not turn into you just picking your favorite students? Because let's be real, we all have favorite students. So
sometimes it does, but then I feel that you take yourself out of it. So I've had students who aren't my favorite, but I know they're responsible. And I'm sure us as teachers, we can all identify students who maybe we just don't click like that, but you're responsible. I know you have students and your kids who you're like, you're smart as hell, but you get on my nerves. You know, so
Jaden, like I have Jaden. He's someone who I would want to allow to have a leadership position in my classroom, but he's literally the kid who drives me up a wall every single day, and he's the kid who I have to fuss at every day. So I would hate for like I to be fussing, like me to fuss at him, and he's like.
Right, and I mean, like, those kids, because our kids have personalities. They're smart, prissy kids we would never put in a leadership position because they're smart and prissy and want to be left alone to be smart. And I was that kid in high school, so like, stick you in the corner, you go, run. And then there's the smart kids who can converse very well and work well with others, so you probe them in groups. And I mean, our kids have personalities, and I mean, I'm almost like, I don't know, in my classroom, I was very uncomfortable with having kids
Because I was having to do math.
have input on the disciplinary process, because at the end of the day, I think that's putting them in a position to say that, okay, like as a student, you also have the, I don't know, cognizance to recognize the situation and discipline on an equal footing with me, which I don't agree with. And I mean, I had to drop the hammer on 2 students for the first time the whole year 2 weeks ago. And I mean, at the end of that, like, they were like, well, like, why are you doing this? You can't do this. And I was like, no, I can, because I am in fact the teacher, and the teacher need not a reason. And after that, like, we've been very cool since then, because they've realized that, hey, like, you can recognize when you're doing this, and you can cross the line, so we can let's do it, and we'll be okay.
Because I know, like, for me personally, something I like with TFA is the student surveys that we do,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great time that we can invite kids to give the feedback on our discipline styles. But I feel like, as the book is suggesting, basically like in the moment feedback of your discipline style, and I know personally I'm not open to that.
Yeah.
Not because, especially because also in the moment I'm probably upset, so it's not gonna go over well. If you start tapping your pencil while I'm frustrated, I'm gonna lose it. So.
Right.
That's a good point. I think you have to know yourself. And so knowing your students and knowing yourself, if you're going to be open to that. And then another thing I was thinking about is, for those students, that's constantly going to have to be a check, like a process where a lot of work, because you're constantly going to have to check in with them and like give each other feedback, right? Like, so like they're going to be telling you like, okay, today you raised your voice during this, and this point, say, I felt as though, this and defend yourself. So it's constantly like a conversation. And if and when you feel like they're abusing power, you're gonna have to call that out and be like, I noticed that you started tapping during this part, to fix that. Because I do want to trust you as the voice or level monitor or whatever. But in that situation, I felt like you were abusing power. Can you identify that? Can you, like, that conversation itself is a lot of work. So
yeah. And instead of like, depending on like a whole group, info survey and like improve real time, why not just automatically lean on the kids themselves to run interference for you in the disciplinary process? And like, sometimes I'll go over to one of my trusted kids and say like, like, she's doing too much, she's doing too much, can you just go over there and
to tell her to do less?
Yes.
And going back to Corey's vernacular, I mean, the way he uses it is also ironic. We know that that's not necessarily the way he speaks, but he does it in a tongue-in-cheek type of way. It's not like Corey's trying to see himself getting down with the kids in that way. I mean, he's, every now and then, like with the students, I'll say, like, oh God, you got that on Nation, the entire class will walk in laughter. That's kind of the tongue-in-cheek thing that we do for that.
And then the closing of the book. Oh, I don't like the way that is. Hold on. Looks really weird. Sorry, it just looks really weird. And to ask you guys to read, it's going to be difficult if I leave it like that. There we go. All right. Can you still see it? No?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So if I go like this, you can, there we go. All right. So I pulled 4 things out the closing of the book. All right.
Thank you so much.
Out the closing of the book. And I'll read the first one, and then I'll let each of you take one as well. So the first one says, the way a teacher teaches can be traced directly back to how a teacher has been taught.
You have to choose to either do damage to them or to the student.
Yeah, my bad.
The effectiveness of a teacher can be traced directly to what the teacher thinks of the student. If the teacher doesn't value the student, they are more likely to stay in the traditional model of the classroom.
You cannot be effective if it means.
Good job. And so the next slide just says, speak now and forever hold your peace. So I was just wondering, does anyone have like any aha moment they want to say about the closing of this book? These were 4 things I pulled from the book that the closing had. And I'll be honest, these 4 things I was all like, oh, I agree with these. Except number 2, I was like, I like it, but I also feel like we need to find a way to navigate both, which goes back to teaching kids how to navigate the dominant culture and their own culture. But I feel like all these stuck out as something that didn't matter to a teacher. Everyone safe? Okay. And then there's your exit ticket. Brittany, I'll stick it in the thing for you. If I can figure out how to access it really quickly. I'm not really good at this Zoom thing. Sorry, guys. I don't know how to access the chat. Okay, wait, no, that's not it.
Just move the cursor until like it goes to the chat. Well, to the
It's
side.
different because I'm on this thing. I'm on like the, what you call it? It's a really long link.
Is it a long link?
Kind of. Okay, wait. Oh, I found the top thing, which means I can find the chat. Sorry, I'm moving it out your way now. And enter for Brittany and
Yay.
make it big so you guys can see it better. There we go. Quick little plug, those who have to do the makeup session, just also write along in your ticket. One way you're going to use this in your classroom and you'll be set for your makeup work. The only additional thing is to actually write a sentence or 2 about how you're going to use this time in this session to go into your classrooms. Are you guys able to access it? Sorry.
Is that R, capital R, lowercase L, uppercase L? Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Maybe it's an I.
No, I think it's an R. I'm sorry, an R.
Let's see if I can get it. And then if I can't, I'll just text it. Yeah, I think it's an I.
Oh, I got it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Brittany, you got it too?
Yes. Yep. I'm taking it right now. We good?
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
Let's see, how do I end session now? Oh, here we go. End meeting.